There's so many different things that people are researching and studying in the Great Lakes, but I had the fortunate opportunity to work with a bunch of wonderful people across the Great Lakes Basin as part of this Center of Great Lakes Literacy Network, to put together a curriculum for science teachers and history teachers and math teachers, to educate their students, middle and high school students, um, about the connection between the Great Lakes and the Underground Railroad. And so that looks a variety of different ways, and we have 11 lessons together right now that are set, they are published. But as the year goes on and future years go on, and we find more information and more resources, we're going to increase those lessons. But a lot of what it is freedom seekers use the Great Lakes to get to Canada. And so they used it as a passageway to escape from, these northern territories that still weren't necessarily free,
Oh,
to that safe space over in Canada. Freedom seekers are essentially escaped slaves, or enslaved people that were seeking freedom. So they were trying to get away from the horrible conditions, especially in the South, and moving up north in the United States, and then even further, so that they can have their freedom and be like every other person that is living in the United States, which was not the case. Like not everybody had that same, freedom back in the 1800s, and not even now, really. They were navigating the land. So they were environmentalists. They were using the landscape that exists. They were looking for moss growing on different sides of trees. They were looking for the correct berries to eat. They were looking for the ways the rivers were running to help them navigate their way north. They were listening for animal sounds, and they were just they're following stars so that they can get to different locations that, the people that were helping them along the way. They were trying to get to
yeah.
those different locations that were already specified for them, but they had to navigate through the nighttime, and so that there's no light out, and trying to figure out how to get to those safe places under the darkness,
Right.
utilizing the resources that they had, which was pretty much their knowledge about the environment, and that was about it. And some maps. Not a lot of them could read, so some of it was looking for words that are looking kind of like shapes. So, for example, Harriet Tubman had a sign that said look for Pennsylvania. So when you see a sign that has like this same shape of words, then you know you're in the right place. Freedom seekers had a guide that had already traveled that route,
Okay.
so that they weren't doing that by themselves. But typically, if the water is flowing against you, it's flowing in a downstream location. So to go north, you are going to walk against the current. Moss grows on the north side of trees. And so if they are walking and they see moss on the north side, then they know they're going in the right direction, because it's not going to be growing in the direction opposite of where they should be going.
Okay. Yeah.
It's cross curricular, and so that's what we wanted everybody to understand. Science is not just science. Sometimes it's also reading and comprehension, and it's also history, and it's also math, and everything is connected. They're going to read passages, about how Native Americans assisted freedom seekers, in their journey. And one of the things that I'm going to be working on soon is looking at how Indiana and Illinois native tribal lands impacted that as well, because I mean those they're right on the water. Um, but looking at those influences, they're going to be looking at marine archaeology, and so
Oh,
a lot of people got on ships to assist that travel in. There were a lot of shipwrecks in Lake Michigan for a variety of reasons. Most of these boats were not too sturdy, because they were made in the 1800s out of wood. They weren't necessarily meant to last like the ships we make now that are out of metal. And so looking at, what can we what can we find of remnants in certain areas, because that wood is decomposed for the most part by now. What can we find in remnants in the area that maybe indicate that there were freedom seekers on this ship? And then looking at the Cataract Hotel. So the Cataract Hotel was a hotel in New York that was used as a filtering system. So slave owners would come and they would bring their enslaved peoples to this hotel. They were thinking, well, my enslaved person isn't going to escape. They have a good life. I treat them well. But there were Black employees in that hotel whose job was to take them from that location and get them to over to Canada, because this was in the Niagara Falls area. Um, and so there's an article where the students can learn more about the Cataract Hotel. It's no longer there, but talking about why it's important to have this as a historic site. And if, like, this is the first time I had learned about that, why it's important for people to know history and know the history of the United States. Another section, so there's two sections to this. There's a section that focuses on naturalists and the Underground Railroad, and then there's a section that talks about Black inventors and patents and science in general, and how Black people have not been represented in these areas because they weren't allowed to have patents back in the day. But here are some inventions, or here are some things that you enjoy today that come from this person, and looking at some biographies and learning more about that process.
Wow.
So it's a lot in 11 lessons, and it can be used in order, or teachers can take what they need. There's a lot of reading involved, because reading is a part of science. We don't get to be scientists without reading a lot of stuff, and so we don't want students to think that it's just a lot of hands-on activities that scientists do. Even though that is, I know how you all and how I try to get them excited about science is to do hands-on things, but
Yeah.
to let them know that reading is reading comprehension and kind of learning about the scientific process and how that's all combined. You go to the Siegel website. Siegel stands for the Center for Great Lakes Literacy. That URL is cgll.org. You can find it under the educators resource section. There's also a wealth of just different resources that you can find on that website about the Great Lakes. I'm actually shameless plug, working on a project to put together some basic. If you want to teach your class about Lake Michigan but don't know where to start, here are some lessons that you can use throughout your semester. So I'm about to start a pilot project with that, so that teachers don't have to dig through all of the knowledge that we have in the lessons that we have about Lake Michigan, and can kind of focus on getting started in one place. And so that is there. There's also on that site and on that same page, we have it published through Google Docs. It's a Google document, and teachers can take it and download a PDF version of that if they want to just distribute it in their classes. A lot of teachers are virtual right now, so they're using Google Suites and Google Classroom, and so they can take it and drop that right into their classroom and utilize it that way. And there's a video on there that explains how they can do that, and use that in their classroom in that fashion too. I think teachers would want to incorporate this into their curriculum, because it's not information that has normally been taught. And it's information that should be taught because it is a part of American history. And having these next generations, having them know everything, like not keeping anything a secret, not whitewashing everything, having them know what the world is like, is only going to make them better people at the end of the day. It's going to make them more well-rounded. It's going to make them more accepting. It's just going to make their students be better people.